This is the Three Skeevers podcast.
All right, episode 8 of the Three Skeevers podcast with Grim from Grim's Forge Gaming and myself, Icy, with Icyfire Gaming. How you doing, Grim?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. We have another special guest today in studio. The Isth3reno1else. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing good, dude. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. And I guess I kind of like to share a little story that I have with a guest if there is one. And this goes back maybe in the springtime, Grim, when I was trying to figure out where I want to be with support and stuff, and I was working on my builds for my Argonian Warden, and you said to me, hey, yeah, check this build video out from Isth3reno1else. I was like, okay. And it was the Swiss Army Knife Magsork build that you put together. I was like, okay, this sounds kind of cool. And I was watching a video and you were doing your commentary through the BGs, and at the end you were like, oh yeah, just 1 million heals, no problem, just like any other day. And I was like, holy cow, that's crazy. And oddly enough, though, there was one part that stuck with me, and I think you were kind of trolling when you were going over the champion points. But when you were going over the Magicka section, I forget I'm not sure if it's the Atronach tree or the Mage tree, one of those. But when you were like, okay, you're just gonna do 100 points in the Blessed, 100 points into the critical healing one, and then 70 points into the increase your staff damage. Done. Don't care. Just healing. Move on to the next one. You spent like 5 seconds total on it, and I was like, what? He can't just do that. And then I thought about it. I'm like, well, he's kind of got a point there. And honestly, to this day, I still do that on all my healers.
Nice.
All the time.
Yeah.
So I thought that was it was a pretty. I didn't realize it until I went back and I was like, hold on, I think I know this guy from even earlier when I was still kind of figuring out and learning the game. So yeah, that's my story.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I really enjoyed that build, even though it's really annoying to play against.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool though.
Yeah.
So we had a full agenda for today, and as far as things we were going to talk about, but I have to say your last two videos need to be the part of the topic today. They were pure gold, and I think I posted that too. I really, really liked those. But I want to know, are we going to get the Isth3reno1else persona from the videos today, or are we going to get the behind the story, the behind story to those videos? Is this a war on proc sets? What is this?
I mean, I suppose I could try to get in character and do it both, but yeah, I don't know. Like I've been talking about, I mean, you guys know how this is. Like you post content on your channel and it gets shared and it's awesome. It goes to the forums, it goes to Facebook pages, Twitter, wherever. And randomly I'll get pinged and people will be like, hey, I posted your video on the forums. It's like, all right, cool. Let's go see what discussion it is. And, the difference that I've found is people on your YouTube channel, like they come to watch you and they want to engage with you and everything. People on the forums, like they're just being given something that, they don't have that sort of like, I like this guy, I'm going to hear what he has to say sort of thing, So every time I go to go and read something somewhere else, it kind of blows me away, like the content or like what I see, because you'll see people like make comments like, oh, like I was dueling my buddy with proc sets a while back and I'd killed him with light attacks and proc sets. And people are commenting and they're like, oh, his buddy's trash at this game. He's just not very good. This is a dueling build. And I'm like, what dueling build exists where I'm just using light attacks and no ultimates, Yeah. Like how is this a dueling build? It just doesn't make any sense. And then you have the people that, they like their proc sets. They don't want them to change. And I totally get that. But like they, instead of like debating with information, they basically just say, you just hate this, and they just want to like slap away all information, like, nope, this isn't true because I like them. This is the only way I can compete. And I don't know. I've just read and talked to so many people. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to, instead of talking about proc sets in the way that I normally do, I'll just like create a character and, show the gameplay of, how ridiculous I think these sets are, you know, and I'm glad people are enjoying it because I'm having a lot of fun making them. Like they've been a lot of fun for me. So
Yeah. Did you know there was going to be backlash? Did you suspect that there was going to be backlash for people because your notice label, you know, this was just satire or whatever, is located at the end of the video.
yeah,
so did you expect the backlash that you've gotten?
I did. Yeah. So in Elsewhere, so I was talking to you about this a little bit before, but yeah, I've made like 600 different videos on my YouTube channel, and I've done 3 sarcastic ones, you know, 3 like joking ones like this. So it's very rare, and like, you know, I know that when I deadpan like that, people take me very seriously, and I have to be like really careful when I'm giving out actual information to not be sarcastic, because, you know, people will take me seriously, you know, and they'll say, oh, you know, Else said that you had to put points into, you know, Mighty on a healer, you know, because he said it, like we have to do this, you know, and you know, I could be just joking. But yeah, when I did the first video, it was during Elsewhere, and I was making fun of Petsorks. And if you guys played in Elsewhere, like Petsorks were extremely powerful at that point. Like they were ridiculous, and people were, once again, you know. So I was super sarcastic on that, and I had people write paragraphs on there like, I can't believe you believe this. I've been watching you for years, and all of a sudden you go this way. This is just completely out of character for you. And and it's like paragraphs, and then all of a sudden, like, you see the next blurb, they're like, holy crap, I just read the description, well done. You know, like, and so I knew I'd get some backlash, and you know, some people are, you know, they're gonna think that, you know, I'm arrogant or I have an ego and stuff, but most people get that it's a joke, you know, that hopefully they know that even if they don't laugh, you know, my goal is to just have fun with something, you know. So
yeah, well done, mission accomplished. Yeah. So would you say that these videos, then the thought process behind it, you're drawing attention to the fact that this isn't the way to shorten the skill gap. This is basically giving built-in damage to people, and they literally only need to hit one button and have some level of success. And we all agree that that's not the way. Like, that's basic premise behind this, is that these sets should not be a thing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's my thought that this game is, you know, this game's pretty in depth from a combat perspective, in my opinion, and it's a really fun game once you start diving down that rabbit hole of different combinations and all this other sorts of things. And you know, new players see these proc sets, and they're like, you know, finally, you know, I get to defeat the guy humping the tree. You know, I see that all the time. You know, the guy humping the rock, I finally get to kill him with proc sets, and it's like, that only exists if they're not running proc sets. You know, the minute they start running proc sets, you're done. And I'm hopefully trying to show, like, you know, I've done 3 different BG matches, and I've gone 10-1, 16-3, and 9-3. You know, and it's, you know, I mean, it's BGs. You know, sometimes it's good players, sometimes it's bad players. But the point is like, I'm getting good KDs with 1 skill and no ultimates, and I could be way worse, like if I use like full skill combinations and abilities and stuff. And every single time, like I've been playing this game since it came out on Xbox, so for 5 years now. And every time they come out with this proc meta, it always widens the gap. You know, it always widens the gap between good and bad players, because when you give good players more damage, they already know how to heal and survive. They're going to figure out what stuff to block, what to dodge roll, you know, when to CC break, and bad players don't. And so if you give me a free thing that's going to tick on somebody's health bar and they don't know how to properly use their vigor or the rapid regen or something, you're going to give me more windows to finish that player. And every time I run proc sets, it's just really easy to get and finish kills. And I don't like running them because I just feel like, you know, imagine being a new player, you know, and you're trying to figure out the game, and all of a sudden you just get hit with a light attack and you got 3 different proc sets on you and like half your health bar is gone. You're like, what the heck was that? You know, what the heck just happened to me?
Yeah. And not only that, but it wasn't until recently a lot of stamina characters couldn't even access vigor until like so far into the assault line, so they had no heals.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what do you think the answer is? How do we bridge the gap between the skill gap? If there's a war on this, or a fight for the skill gap, and Zoss says this is something that we need to address, or is it Zoss saying this is something we need to address, or is it just a bunch of the people that are on the lower end of the spectrum complaining and saying these people are unkillable, we need to bridge this skill gap between us and them? And looking for an easy answer. Who initiated this bridge the skill gap, do you think?
I think probably ZeniMax did, with a few of their forum posts talking about lowering APM and stuff like that. Like we want to essentially raise the floor and make, other builds more competitive. And so in that way, it does make sense. I can get behind, like my entire contention on my channel is, I like seeing new and unique builds. It's fun running across people running stuff that you wouldn't really expect in a combination you don't normally see, and that they can be effective with it. And so the more variety and unique builds exist that allow people to play how they want, I think that's great. I think that's great that exists. It's my contention that they're attempting to find balance. I don't know if you guys read the patch notes as like judiciously as some people do, but like the last few patches they've gone through 200 or 300 different set changes and like Mundustone changes. Like they changed Spriggans by 10 pen. They changed Spinners by 10 pen. They changed New Moon Acolyte by 80 weapon damage. They dropped it 80. So they're trying to make these little tweaks on some of these sets to try and bring them in line with other sets. They have some sort of whatever their formula is. They believe that this brings these sets in line and similar to other sets, but in a different way. And I think that's what they're trying to do with proc sets. But I think what they're doing, and I could be wrong, this is just my opinion, but I think they're looking at it from a parsing perspective. Like I'm on a trial dummy, I'm using a rotation. How powerful do these proc sets need to be comparable to, damage sets like non proc damage sets? And so they're trying to up the proc damage to combat trial dummy situations where you have crit modifiers and all these other things coming into play, and they're like, oh crap, we really have to up the proc damage. And when they do that from the trial or overland PvE perspective, those things don't matter in PvP. Everybody's running around with 3k impen, 3500 impen. The fact that proc sets aren't critting isn't, that's where it's not balanced. That's where you're starting to get this imbalance. And then you throw in Malakath on top of it. Like they're like, hey, we want to balance all these sets. Now we're going to throw in a 25% modifier on top of these sets. And, where this crit value doesn't really matter as much in PvP, and proc sets just become even more pronounced and even more powerful than other sets. And so, in my opinion, I have no problem with people running proc sets and proc sets existing in the game. Like people like the unique conditions of them. They like what they do, and I totally get that. It's just if you're going to adjust New Moon Acolyte by 80 weapon damage, if you're going to adjust Spinners and Spriggans by 10 pen, we have to look at what proc sets are doing. That's my contention.
Do you think that there should be? I'm not sure if Elder Scrolls is even the type of game maybe meant for this, but maybe have a division where you have sets that are PvP only. They won't like the fifth perk on the set will not work if it's a PvP set in a PvE zone, or vice versa. Do you think that would be a good idea or not?
I've thought, that's actually a really good question. I've thought about that one quite a bit also. I think it would solve a lot of problems. I think that would be like the easy way to just go about like, okay, this set's problematic in PvP. It doesn't exist in PvP.
I like that.
And I think those sorts of things would make a lot of sense. So like if you and I mean, you guys know, like PvE and PvP are two completely different games, you know, and oftentimes, like, you know, as PvPers, we're dealing with just crazy overperforming stuff. And, you know, we go to the forums like, hey, you know, something has to be done about this specific setup. And, you know, the guy in PvE that's, you know, he's running 4-man group content, he doesn't see what the issue is. And you've just taken his favorite set from him, you know?
Right.
And I think that's the thing that I try to talk to players about quite a bit. Like, you know, I try to have this discussion like, hey, you know, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be PvP versus PvE. You know, it should be, hey, what can we do to get what we want in our environment that doesn't ruin the other group's environment, you know? And yeah, I definitely think that that's a good idea. I think that's definitely a good option. They've done that for some skills. Like ambush used to stun NPCs. You know, like if you ambush something, it used to stun them. They had to, like, they adjusted to that, you know, because it wasn't, they're like, you know what, this doesn't make any sense that it works for NPCs but not players, you know. And so they got rid of that a while back. But like they've done stuff like that in the game where some stuff exists in a current format but not the other one. And yeah, I think that's a good option. The other one I've talked about is just like global cooldown and proc sets. You know, like if you want to wear procs, cool, but only one fires at a time, you know. I think that's another good option. Reducing the overall value to counteract what Malacath does, I think, is another good option. There's quite a few, you know. I don't know if one's better than the other, but yeah, there's ways to go about doing it.
And for proc sets, would you put, I guess, well, first question, would you consider Eternal Vigor a proc set?
Eternal Vigor.
Because it's not a heal, it's not a damage proc set, it's just
probably
okay.
a condition-based set.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I should have stipulated that. My bad. Yeah, because there's multiple different proc sets. Like Bloodspawn's a proc set. Like you said, Eternal Vigor's a proc set. Clever Alchemist is a proc set. Where I draw the line, and, you know, maybe I'm wrong. You know, you guys can tell me what you think on this too. But I feel like sets like Bloodspawn, Clever Alchemist, Eternal Vigor. Eternal Vigor is a little, I guess I shouldn't lump that one in with the other ones, but like they give you stats that help your build. They don't do the goal for you, you know, like, whereas if I am running Venomous Smite or Sheer Venom and I hit a poison injection, you know, it's now proccing essentially free damage on people. And, you know, that's what I consider like doing my work for me. You know, what I was trying to show in the videos. If I just pop Clever Alchemist and I hit a poison injection, it's not like I'm going to just kill that person. You know, right. I'm not, you know, and so I would leave the proc conditionality sets, you know, ones that give you resistances, major, minor buffs, weapon damage, pen, whatever they are. Like, I would leave those out of this. I would just look at proc damage sets, ones that just, when you satisfy a condition, they do X amount of damage per second or whatever. And I like, that's the ones that I'm kind of looking at.
So what if, and the one that comes to mind for me is Icy Conjurer with the Ice Wraith. Yeah. What if, or how about this for a potential solution? Any sort of damage proc set, if you enter a PvP zone, it will just become inactive. The 5th perk will be inactive. So you would just get the first 3 benefits, 2, 3, and 4, and then the 5th perk just will never proc.
Yeah.
You think that would be an okay compromise?
Yeah, it's too bad. Like I think it's a good option, because I mean, the issue is, you know, stacking of proc sets and stuff, and it really is hard. You know, like sometimes I think about this stuff, and, you know, when I talk about balance things, like I want to make sure that I feel like I know what I'm talking about, you know? Mm-hmm. And so you think about like what you would do as a developer, you know, and in my head, I'm like, well, if I was a developer, what would I do? And you start thinking about PvE and PvP and how completely different games they are. Like, they're absolutely different. And if I was a PvP focused developer, a lot of changes that I would personally make, you know, if I didn't go through Battle Spirit or anything like that, they would change PvE drastically without, you know, and that's not my intention. That wouldn't be my intention, but that would be what would happen, because I don't really think about the game from a trial PvE perspective in the same way I think about it from PvP. And I think with the developers, I think they look at it the other way. I think a lot of them are more around parses and rotations and stuff like that. And they don't see some of the PvP issues that exist in the game. And I could be wrong. This is just kind of one of my assumptions, I guess. And so if I was them, and instead of like having this hair pulling situation where you're like, oh my gosh, like every single time we come up with a new set, it's always an issue somewhere, like eliminating some of those sets in certain environments would make a lot of sense. I think that would be the easiest way to go about doing it. Like, okay, well, if we're going to continually come out with these proc damage sets and we're balancing them around PvE parse rotations, maybe we just shut them off in PvP, and I know
that answer.
yeah, like maybe some people, and I know a lot of people don't like that answer, and I get that because I like unique builds. Like even proc sets, I don't have a problem with people running different proc damage sets. It's just, when I'm hitting a light attack plus a skill, like I've shown in the videos, and I'm in BGs and I'm running 700, 800, 1.4 million damage, just using a light attack and a skill, I don't think that's balanced at all. I don't think that's healthy gameplay. I haven't gotten nasty whispers yet, because I think most people know what I'm doing. I think most people know, like, hey, he's testing stuff, so I don't get the crazy like hate whispers. But if I went on PC today and I did the same thing with my PC account in a different name, I guarantee you that wouldn't be the same way. Like people don't like getting proc down. It's just, you're gonna light attack me and now I have 4 different conditions on me, and the game's not giving me enough healing to cope with it. And there's the forms of purges that would remove this are expensive, and not every class has them, and like there's not enough things out there to combat this stuff. And I think toning it back makes a lot of sense, or eliminating it, either way.
Yeah, I feel like, well, number one, the thing that I envision with this when we're talking about PvE specific sets, or I think all sets should be allowed probably in PvE, and only specific sets maybe should be allowed in a PvP atmosphere. Cyrodiil, Imperial City Sewers, and BGs. And if you're going to release proc sets to PvP, they're balanced specifically for PvP. Because I think that those sets that we're talking about were balanced or created, like you were saying, more for the PvE side. And now it's just this monster in PvP that, how do we balance the two? Like, it's performing right where we want it to PvE, but in PvP it's melting people. So
yeah,
that's the problem. So all I envision is the armor set, you're looking at the chest piece or whatever, in the bottom left-hand corner, it's got a yellow PvE and it's got a little yellow PvP. So when you look at an armor set, you can say, okay, well, this set's used in both PvE or PvP. If it's missing PvP, you realize this set is not a PvP set. I won't be able to enter those zones or those areas, with this set on. And only reason I say that is probably a better answer is because if you take the 5-piece away from Icy Conjurer, I don't know how many people are going to put a build together specifically for Icy Conjurer just to hit the 4-piece bonus on it, when there's other things at that point that you're going to try and get a 5-piece from somewhere doing something. So so that was kind of a thought, but I would be completely fine if you go down to the Telvar vendors or you go out to Cyrodiil. They should have PvP gear vendors and gear those specifically for PvP, and it would solve so much of a problem. Gives the developers more gear, new shiny things to create, for the consumer, and that's going to help them out immensely in balancing. Another weird thing too, this is kind of a side note about proc sets and how they're overperforming and causing issues. How much of proc sets do you think the calculations that are going on are adding to the lag situation or the issues that the performance issues. Do you think that all these people running around with sheer venom and all these different proc conditions and AoE damage, and it's having to check everyone's resistances to that damage and everything, how much we've got developers developing sets like that, and then we on this in the same breath we have, you know, performance issues. What's your thoughts on those two and how they coincide?
It's my opinion that like you're hitting the nail on the head here. Like I don't know. I mean, I think the listeners should know, like, none of us know the answer to what sear to lag is. You know, we don't know what it is, but you know, 5 years ago we had less proc sets, we had less higher developed characters, and we had less lag, you know, and now we have more proc sets and we have more max level characters, and now we have more lag. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, you see them, like, all these different patches, they've come and they're working in the background, like how these different sets function, you know, instead of like Bloodspawn being, you know, like Bloodspawn's like an 8% chance to proc, you know, they're getting rid of these percent chances. It's now just, okay, we're going to put it on a cooldown. Like, this will stop, you know, some of the computer work in the background, you know, of all these different things. And I think you're right. And the thing that I've kind of talked about with like proc healing sets is, you know, these proc healing sets have like a 32 meter range around keeps, you know, like if I'm a healer and I'm running rapid regen and I'm just spamming rapid regen, and, you know, before they made the changes to where it only affects your group, and I'm hitting, you know, I'm in a 60-man group and I'm hitting 10, 15, 20 people because I'm trying to get AP, push EMP, you know, whatever, get a high score, get a cool rank. Somebody could be 20 meters away from me, and if they get hit with a meteor and they drop below half health, my Earth Core that I'm wearing is going to run a check. Like, okay, all the people that I've healed, who's below 50% health? Who do I need to proc on? You know, and I think those checks are happening all the time. And whether it's proc healing sets or proc damage sets, you know, they still have the same thing to take into account. So like sheer venom, like we were talking about, if I hit with a poison inject on one person with sheer venom, it has to take into account, you know, whether or not I'm running Malcath, what my CP is, you know, whether I have Sharpen on there. It has to take into account their resistances, you know, and all these other sorts of things. And that's on top of, you know, other damage. And then I hit the next person. And, you know, sheer venom specifically, like, it scales on missing health. And so then you have to have that second modifier, like, okay, how much damage should I be doing now that they're at 50% health? Okay, now they're at 40%. Now they're at 80%. You know, like, how much damage should I be proccing at this point in time? And I don't think it makes it better. You know, I don't think it makes. I mean, how much of a difference it is, I obviously, like I said, I have no idea. But I think you would. I mean, ZeniMax has come out and said, like, characters and how the CP system has impacted performance. You have to think proc sets are right there. You know, like, you have to think proc sets and their conditionalities are having kind of the same impacts on the game that, you know, max level champion characters are having also. So that's a good point.
Yeah, Icy and I were talking about this too, and this was a while back. I started noticing performance issues and things like that, not being able to bar swap and use abilities and all these different things, and I'd complain about it because for me, the biggest heartache for me is that I really enjoy this game. It's a beautiful looking game. I enjoy combat in its current fashion, and when it doesn't perform, or it's laggy, or it crashes, that's very frustrating. And so we were talking about it, and this was a while back. I said, you know, I don't think that this problem is going to be relegated just to PvP. I think this performance issue problem, we're going to start seeing it in a PvE atmosphere more and more.
Yes.
And so now in our guild chats, we actually see, like, Great Glory's out doing a trial, and some of our friends are like, I can't use abilities right now, and I can't do this. And Icy and Papa were farming mythics just a couple days ago, right, Icy? And you guys ran into problems?
Yeah, we were over in Murkmire killing the boss to the northwest of the map, and it was just me and him, just me and Papa. And I think one of the mechanics to the boss is he will spawn totems that will heal him. So it got to a point where it was so bad that he was healing from the totems, but the totems were not visible on the map yet, and you could see the animation of the totem heals going from their location over to his location, to the boss's location, and then he's getting about 60% of the healing from it, and then the totems will show up, we'd kill one totem, and then the phase would be over and the mechanic is done. And I'm thinking, oh well, that's pretty awesome counterplay right there. Glad we had enough opportunity to get all these totems down and continue the boss fight. And the only way we could win is because slowly, after about every minute, one extra person would show up, and we got about 6-7 people, and we were able to just brute force the boss down. Otherwise, with the amount of lag that was present in Murkmire, which I don't think a lot of people hang out there, but it was pretty ridiculous, and it just made me think, good lord, man, like, this game, it just feels like it's slowly deteriorating over time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, when I was doing my Mythic run, I was on PC and I was trying to figure out how to do everything. And I'm streaming it, because people want to see like what Mythics are all about and everything, and figure it all out and stuff. And I'm killing bosses for these leads, and I'm dying. I'm dying to overland area bosses, and like some of them hit hard. Some of them they kill you and you're like, all right, cool. Some of them don't hit hard. Like I was in the Rift and I was fighting like the giant and the mammoth, and I died like 2 or 3 times in a row. And I looked down in I looked at my ping, and I'm at 500 ping in the Rift, and I'm like, what is this? Like, is this bad? And so I cut my stream short, and I'm like, sorry guys, like it's so late. Like I have 500 ping in the Rift. Like this isn't, this is ridiculous. I can't play, when the game is this bad. And then I come to find out that it was actually just the Rift. So I was doing other areas, and like my ping dropped down to 80, 90, 100. And then when I went to the Rift, it shot up to over 500. And I agree with you guys. I do think it's the lag and performance stuff is slowly, like it's always been worse in PvP, but trial situation, there's a lot of trial guys I follow on YouTube that they had to quit due to performance. And, like they, I don't know if you guys follow like the Asian God or whatever on YouTube, but
yeah,
he posted a thing on his channel a couple months ago. He's like, I'm done playing. I'm tired of, basically like they're queuing up for score runs, like they're trying to get high scores on the leaderboards. And sometimes like the queue that they're in, like sometimes mechanics just don't work, so if there's a one-shot mechanic that can kill everybody and you have to block there, sometimes the one-shot mechanic would one-shot you anyways. And so your score run would be ruined because the game's just literally not working. And they're like, it's not worth it. It's not worth, he literally said farming queues. Like they were trying to find good queues for score runs. And I'm like, I can't even imagine, like I'm dealing with not being able to CC break and cast heals, but like, and I obviously those are higher tier PvE players, but it's the same thing's going to keep, like people that, if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, hey, this isn't going to impact me, it is. The point that I think we're trying to make here is it's impacting PvP. It's impacting trials. It's, I've had really laggy dungeons, where all of a sudden like I get killed by a boss and I didn't know the boss was there because he was invisible, just like your totems, the boss is invisible and I get one shot by something. I'm like, okay, like what if I was going for a no death run? What if I'm trying to get achievements to get my CP up, like get more experience. And one of the achievements is to do it this amount of time or not die. And now I don't get the achievement because the game isn't allowing it to happen. And I think that's the biggest problem, like even more problematic than proc sets or anything, is, overall performance. And I've made this comment on some of my videos where, like if we have to just, and I'm not saying that this exists, like I said, the more sets and different conditional things that exist in the game, the better. I think it's awesome when people have different builds, and proc sets are part of that. I think proc damage sets are overperforming and they need to be brought back a little bit, but I don't have a problem with them existing in PvP. But the problem I think that we're encountering oftentimes is just, sometimes like I don't know what their budget is over there. I don't know like what the fixes are, but I would be willing to make a lot of sacrifices to gear sets and conditional sets and all these other things. And I'm a theory crafter. Different sets are good for me, to post on my channel. I'd be okay with those not existing and just having like a very dumbed down Hunding's Rage, New Moon Acolyte, you know, wear 5 different sets in PvP if the game worked while we did it.
Yeah,
You know, like
that would
I
be
would be-
great.
I would be okay with it if that was the outcome. Like, hey, you're gonna have lag-free PvP, but you don't get to wear, you know, these sets, which would suck. You know, I don't want that to happen. But if that would fix the problem of lag, that would be something that I'm okay with. And you know, I'm not speaking for everybody here. Some people wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't be okay with that. But yeah, performance is it's bad. It's really bad. So
Yeah.
Well, real quick, I have a quick thought. So with all the Cyrodiil changes that they're doing, and they're trying to, I guess, reduce the amount of interactions between the proc sets that are hitting the server and stuff. What about instead of doing it with reducing cooldowns and limiting the messages going back to the server, why not just put a limit as another test example? How we have three bar population stuff. Why don't they just reduce the population size per faction to? Well, do you guys know what the actual limit is per faction? Is it like 200 players?
honestly, I don't know. I don't know what the limit is. That sounds right. 200 or 300.
Okay, we'll just pretend it's 200 per faction. Why don't they just do one test where they only allow 50 players per faction, and then see how performance is?
Yep.
I think
Yeah.
that might be a pretty cool test, and if honestly things are pretty stellar at that point, I'm sure they could deduce something from that from that line of reasoning with whatever they're getting on their end.
Absolutely. So in my Discord, I've been, you know, we have a bunch of different people in there from different platforms and stuff. And I got a few guys in there from PC NA and PC EU. And this was last week. Last week's AoE checks where they reduced the group size to 12 players. And multiple people were like, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, but performance is way better. There are like multiple people were, I had 4 or 5 different people say it. I'm like, is this just you? Like, is it low pop or whatever? And they're like, no, like with 12 people, it's a lot less laggy. They're like, yeah, you know, I was defending an Emp keep, you know, and everybody was there. I was lagging there, but like anywhere else, I wasn't lagging too bad because they reduced the group size. And, you know, with what we were talking about before and with what you're talking about, which I agree with, you know, if you have less of these checks, you know, like they have a lot of sets that function off of like group size, you know, now. So like Earthgore only works with people in your group, Rapid Regen, Healing Springs. And so if you have a smaller group, it's less checks. Well, if you have less people, it's less checks also. And I remember this now. I did a video a while back, and I remember it was you, Grim. You were talking about Imperial City and how Imperial City doesn't lag like Cyrodiil does, you know, because each different district is like its own instance, you know, so it's all kind of isolated in their individual areas. So you go through a door and it's a different area. You go through a door and it's a different area. And I remember your comment was like, what if you did something like that? You compartmentalize Cyrodiil in the same way. So like you go through a gate and it's a different, like it's a semi-different area, you know, and so you kind of function the map in the same way that Imperial City seems to function, because yeah, even during the double Telvar event, there's hundreds of people in Imperial City. And I think I may have lagged like once or twice this last event, you know, like it was actually functioning really well. And I had like 24 people chasing me, and you know, I'm getting zerged down, but I'm happy because my skills are firing, you know, like, you know, like,
yeah,
I'm
you're
gonna
like,
die, I
holy
have
crap,
no
it's
chance,
working.
yeah. Like I'm dying, but I don't care because I can actually do something. Like I have a chance to survive now. And yeah, I think those are definitely interesting options. The only counter I would say to that, Icy, is if you reduce the amount of people, you know, you guys, I'm sure you guys notice this too, but like when you get down to like 1 or 2 bars in PvP, all of a sudden the map just dies, you know, because there's people not pushing objectives, you know, they're not taking keeps and they're not sieging anymore. And all of a sudden, like combat just kind of disappears because there's no places to contend. And so if you reduce the size of Cyrodiil too much, I think you would create a situation to where, you know, a lot of people don't like to siege. You know, they don't like sieging. And so it would make people siege, which I think would be good. But at the same time, like, you know, you might stagnate the map, you know, and it might just slow down combat quite a bit. Now, that'll be another like thing you would have to look at also.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see how problematic it is too. So imagine if you lower instead of there being a queue, well, number one, we don't have the actual numbers, do we, of the population or of, the current amount of people allowed. It's just 1 bar, 2 bar, or 3 bar pop. And I saw a funny post and somebody said, well, heck yeah, they don't want to put the actual number, because then when it's only 1 bar pop and we find out that 1 bar pop is 10 people or less for a faction represented in the area, well, why is the game still lagging? Why is there still performance issues? And so it would kind of add to that. But number two, if you limit the queue, the amount of people in queue, and you got to sit and wait for someone to drop out so you can pop in or whatever, you're going to have to add more servers. Well, in the moment that you add more servers, because there are going to be times where you're pop blocked for that server, the fact that we are going to hit pop block on a PvP server from time to time, and they never know, they have an idea of when that would be, but you never know, they're going to need to add another server. Well, in that moment, the second you add another server option, the more server options reduce the likelihood that you're going to run into groups, especially if we lowered it down to only 50 people per faction. So now Cyrodiil's a huge open world map, and at most DC's got 50 people in this map if it's at pop block, which means that we've got roughly 5 groups of 10 running around, right? If we limit the group size or whatever. And are they running together? Where are they at? Other people are going to be on the other server. I think it's going to make the fights too sporadic, and we're going to start seeing more of the Game of Thrones people juggling Emperor pushes and working with other factions and things like that.
Yeah,
you're more likely to see that on a dead server, right? And so there's that, but I don't know. I like the idea of making it. You wouldn't believe the amount of backlash I got from that. So many people hated that idea. They thought it was stupid. They're like, one person even said, another IC, thanks, but no thanks, And it's like, look, you're missing the point. The point is this: if you had to choose between adding global cooldowns and changing the core functionality of combat in this game versus simply segregating or relegating or creating zones within this open world, you still have an open world feel, but maybe you load in at this choke point, a bridge or whatever, to the next area. Just by adding that, if we can limit the lag or limit the performance issues to a specific area, would you take that over just changing the core functionality of the game altogether? And they didn't want to answer that, but they didn't like my answer. So
yeah, and I think it's I guess I should make this clear for the people listening. I think we all agree that the easiest thing for them to do would be to update their tech, upgrade their servers. We see during the double AP event, when they add more servers to the game, like even if they're pop locked, we don't lag as much during the double AP events, and it's like, okay, well, they're clearly allocating more than what they normally do during this event. Why can't we get this all the time? Why can't we get what this is? Like, I remember Christopher did a video on it, and I agreed, like that's the easiest thing to do, is like, just upgrade your servers. Now, I don't know why that's not happening. None of us know why that's not happening. I think after we saw, ZeniMax sold their studio, I think we saw that they were not looking to invest. They were looking to save money to, sell their business. And so I think that possibly could be part of it. Who knows? I mean, who knows what Microsoft's going to do? Who knows if Microsoft's going to be like, yeah, upgrade your servers? Who knows if they're just going to be like, nope, keep it the way it is? We have no idea. But I think that was possibly part of the reason. But, I look at it like this. You have, people always look at this as like either or options. It's like, why can't we do all of them? So hypothetically, let's say I'm really fat, overweight, and I'm out of shape. Well, what I can do is I can eat healthier and I can work out, and I can, kind of moderate what I'm eating and, the stuff that I'm doing to, not be as fat. And this is the same way for the game. Like, yes, servers need to be improved, but we could also look at how things are interacting. Like, why couldn't we just do both? And so this is the other thing that, we're talking about in this part is, outside of upgrading the servers, what else could be done? And I think what this last week showed was checks on the system are impacting the game. Whether or not they're healing checks due to group size or whatever, and there's multiple different options to go about doing it. Like you said, like you could compartmentalize it. You can make groups smaller. We talked about proc sets just a little bit ago. To make these conditional sets only impact people in your group. All of them. Just do a blanket slate. Like, okay, you can only heal people in your group. You can only your procs healing sets like Troll King and stuff like this will only impact people in your group. Every single set like this will function this way. And I think those things like reducing the amount of checks would be huge. The other thing is, I mean, you guys know this, when Volendrung drops, performance drops every single time. Every time Volendrung drops in the game, it's because everybody runs to Volendrung. Like let's be honest, you want to get your hands on a big ass hammer and swing it around and kill a bunch of people. Like, we've all been there. Like we all want to do it. But now it's gotten to a point to where like I see the hammer and I'm like, okay, if I get any closer than this, I'm going to essentially just lag out. Because everybody's there. Healers want to be there because they're going to get a ton of AP. A bunch of people are taking damage. I get a chance for a lot of AP. And it's a map pusher, so the people that want to play objectives, people that want to, push the map and get imp and, win it for their faction, the hammer's a great way to do it. And so they're there. And you're seeing like, 50, 60, 70 people per faction on this hammer. And just think about the amount of checks that are going into all these people. Like when Resolving Vigor was healing all these people and you had Earthgore running checks on everybody and Troll King and Bogdan and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, no wonder. I mean, you have like this condensed area with all these different combat calculations coming into play with all these different sets that are functioning with it. It's like you could really remove how some of those sets function or change them, and it would adjust the input quite drastically. And
because
I think
it's no zones, right? It's all of Cyrodiil. You could be anywhere on the map, right? And it's not like if you had 50 people DC, 50 EP, and 50 AD, and that same scenario is happening where they're throwing heals out and all these checks are happening, now all of a sudden they're colliding with each other, and now checks are happening with, what's their resistances at and what's their poison resistance at, and, they're immune to chilled status effect, and like all these different checks going on, and it's one huge map. It's happening.
Exactly.
It could be happening on separate sides of the map, and there's still checks going on because it's not separated into different areas. I think that's crazy. I could see how it's lagging out.
There was this is a while back, but I was watching King Richard, one of their podcasts from way back in the day. And I remember it when they said it, but there was at one point, there was a big problem with lag, bigger at that time than what it normally was. And, ZeniMax just came out and said, like, we're not sure what the issue is. Don't get in large group battles. They basically just said, like, you guys are going to have to spread out on the map, until we address this, spread out on the map. And that one always kind of sticks with me in my head when I see stuff like Volendrung. Like when Volendrung dropped, I thought it was a cool idea. It's like a way to counteract Emperor, like now you have this random thing and it's going to make the map more interesting, and it may spread people out because you'll have people fighting, in different places. And the exact opposite has happened, like that doesn't happen. It's a magnet. It literally, like, just like the ultimate that pulls everybody in, once that hammer drops, everybody goes to the hammer. And it's a lot of fun. Like the hammer is a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, like I don't want to see, Volendrung removed. But in the same vein, like if removing Volendrung would improve performance, there's a lot of stuff that I'd be willing to, there's a lot of like really nice things and fun things that I would be willing to just sacrifice for performance. And because that's the most important thing for me. Like a fun and interactive game to where I can actually play is way better than, proc conditions or big old hammer or whatever. And it sucks to say, because it's like, why can't we just have both? Why can't we have this? But if this is the problem, that these AoE checks are happening, you got to find ways to adjust it. And yeah, I think when you look at what the hammer does, and what large groups do, it makes sense why we're having some of the performance issues we're having. And adjusting PvP to where you stop that grouping. Like, people are going to group up around emp keeps no matter what. They're going to run the loop. When you get to that last emp keep, everybody's going to be there. That's always going to happen. But if you can stop these other things from happening, if you can incentivize people to go to the outskirts, like go to the towns, maybe you provide more points for towns. Like, you provide a scoring bonus. Like, if your faction holds all 3 towns, you get bonus, X amount of points per hour, or per 15 minutes or whatever.
Just like Imperial City, right? Plus 33% to
Exactly.
Telmar gained. Maybe it actually weakens the circle, the inner keep, if you control that region north of, like if we're talking about north on the map, if you control the Bruma and, if you control the north, breaching those northern keeps is 30% easier or whatever.
Yeah, or like the outer keeps, like why am I forgetting them right now? My mind just like completely blanked. But the ones in the corners, like on the way outside of the map, if you hold all 3 of those, like like we have an emperor, and this is an idea that I've tossed around in my head, but like, what if, like, if you hold all 3 outer areas, your faction gets a warden. Like you're a ward. You're not an emperor, but you're a ward. And instead of getting a 50% bonus, you get like a 10% bonus. And
that's awesome.
And I think like it incentivizes people to, in a way, to where it's like, yeah, these outer portions of the map are also important. And so people that want to play objectives, like, you have to keep an eye on it. Like, okay, well, we're 2 away from emp, and they're like, like, I think that would allow it would create different incentives for people. Like, you wouldn't have to be on the inside of the map. You could be on the outside. You could be running around, and like, you would still be participating in, group scores and stuff. And I'm not saying that these are the best ideas or anything like that. It's just, what can you do to incentivize people to spread out? And that's the stuff that I kind of think about, is like, how could you create the game to cause people to stop just running emp keeps, And I think that's a pretty cool idea, just to have like a little sub character, But,
yeah. Icy actually and I were talking about, I think it was Icy's idea, but he said, what if each faction had a champion, like Lyris Titanborn or Razum Dar or whoever, and instead of granting player characters,
Volendrung or something.
Yeah, Volendrung. What if, Lyris Titanborn has entered the battlefield and she functions on her own, accord, and she's going straight line to whatever keep it is, and she's going to bust in. And I think it would still function the same way. It's going to be a magnet. People know we need to stop Lyris, but it would open a PvE atmosphere to PvP as well. So, that a lot of people might not, they're like, I'm here for PvP, not PvE. I'm not trying to kill Lyris Titanborn, or whatever. But I think it would incorporate a different aspect to where you do want to own the outer keeps. You own the outer keeps, and then you have this person on the field, and they're a world boss walking around. And so I think that would be interesting. I'm very PvP, more so than PvE, but I still think that would be a fun aspect. So
yeah.
I just had my first Volendrung experience last week, actually, and I never.
How was it?
It was pretty epic. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, holy cow! And there was this our guild leader, Blood. He had Volendrung for a moment, and then it changed hands, and we were following one of the random guys that were not our group, and he ran up to a keep, and he's just like he's hacking down this castle door and everything, and I was just like, holy Christ, are you serious right now? This is pretty dope. And not having had that moment when we were talking about the champion for each faction, Grim, I didn't realize that actually the champion idea could actually work, where Lyris could enter the battlefield somewhere, some location, whatever, and then the first person to interact with her, they would, okay, I'll follow your lead. Where are we going? And then you just follow. She'll be like an NPC that follows you. And then once you go to the nearest keep, she's like, all right, let's go to work. And then she'll just she'll pull out her hammer. They're just kind of like, where instead of you hacking away, she's hacking away. And just, give her all the major minor buffs so she's pretty tanky and everything. And then obviously you can support her and all that nonsense there. And of course, if she gets killed, she'll just kind of take a knee, and obviously play it by ear whether she needs to be on a time limit or not. But
Scotty beams her up, right? Says I'll be back, and then she beams up.
Yeah, so something funky like that. Yeah, and then I think maybe like say you give her 15 minutes or until she dies. If you capture the first keep, hey, keep on going. You have 10 more minutes left to see how many keeps you can take with Lyris Titanborn. So yeah, that actually might be viable. Now that I've seen how Volendrung works, because that was pretty epic.
So I'm just gonna toss this out as an idea. Did you guys ever play Battlefront, like Star Wars Battlefront?
Yes, it's
the original or the new one?
Like any of them. Like I'm thinking of like some of the older ones, but like if you're number one, like if you go on a kill streak, you become Darth Vader or you become Yoda, and you all of a sudden inherit their skills and abilities.
Yeah.
What if your leader, like if you take the outer keeps and you're Ebonheart, your top AP score becomes Lyris.
Yeah,
it's a transformation.
Make it happen.
So you have skills, abilities, ultimates. You have a Lyris ultimate, and you become Lyris Titanborn, and you're basically like what we were talking about. Like we'll just combine the ideas. Like my ward idea, but EP gets Lyris. AD gets Razumdar, and I don't know what DC gets. We're just screwed.
I think it's Darien. I think he's.
Oh yeah, we get Darien.
Yeah, I think he's part of like the main quest line.
Or what's the name of the? Oh my god, I'm gonna get yelled at for this. The Red Guard.
Sai Sahan.
Sai Sahan, yeah. Like DC could have Sai Sahan, and I think that'd be really cool. Like and I know it's kind of gimmicky, but the thing is, it's a game. Like this stuff is supposed to be kind of fun, and like you just like all of a sudden you become this person from the quest. I think that would appeal to a lot of new players. Okay, these people I've been fighting with, doing this quest line, now I get to be them. Like now I get to use their sword, and I get to you can have voice actors, do or say whatever you want, and but give them cool ultimates, give them like a 10% buff, like they get 10% more damage, 10% more health instead of the 50% of emperors. And I think you would see a lot of like we were talking about. I think you would see the map spread out a little bit, because I know I sure as hell would want to be like Sai Sahan or Lyris Titanborn. I think that would be awesome. Like
heck yeah.
I think that'd be really cool. That would be the way to get me to move to Ebonheart, would be to have Lyris Titanborn be an option. I think that'd be pretty cool. So
yeah, especially if for example they gave them all the major buffs or minor buffs. Can you just imagine minor, major heroism proc the whole time on, we'll say Lyris Titanborn, and she's doing whatever the hell her ultimate could be every 40 seconds or so, just annihilating some poor soul. Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah. And I know when we're talking about Battlefront, like if I'm out on the field just as whatever character I am, a heavy or whatever, and it says Yoda has entered the battle, it's like, oh boy. Like, there's a serious player on the field.
There's a midget with a lightsaber.
Yeah, all over the place.
Honestly, I think I'd be the most afraid of Yoda just because he's such a small target, and now it's just the dread of, oh Jesus, man, I cannot aim correctly enough to hit this poor little guy, and now he's just killing my whole team.
Yeah, my wife and I used to play. I think it was Battlefront 2. This is a long time ago now, but one of the maps had really tall grass. It was like really tall grass. I forget the name of it right now off the top of my head, but literally like when you got Yoda, all you saw was the lightsaber, and it really was terrifying, because you just see this lightsaber run at you. You're like, where do I shoot? Like what? And all of a sudden it's like jumping over your body and you're dead, and you're like, oh crap. And my wife loved it because, I was better at that game than her. But if she got Yoda, like it was over. Like she was just wiping out everything. And she's like, ha ha ha. And I'm like, all right, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was fun. And I think, I think that's one thing that I need to be better at too when I'm talking about like balance stuff is keeping in mind, stuff that's fun. Balance is the goal for balance is to make the game more fun, is to make the game more enjoyable,
Yes.
And I think you can dress it up a little bit too and keep that in mind. Like, hey, yes, we are coming out with Aliris Titanborn, whether it's an NPC or like you become them or whatever. The goal is to get people to spread out and like expand the objectives so that it's not as lagging. We're incentivizing PvP everywhere instead of just like at the main 6 keeps, And as long as they do that and with that in mind, it's like, hey, like, because the hammer is fun, it's creating lag issues, but it's fun. And if we can create things that are fun that lower lag, I think that would be the goal that I would shoot for.
Yeah, it sounds like we need to do another whole episode where you explain to us how you get your significant other to play games with you.
She actually got me back into playing games because I had stopped, and we were dating at the time, and she's just like, hey, we should play video games. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. And
will you marry me now?
Yeah, where have you been my whole life?
Yeah, right. I actually proposed later that day. No, but yeah, like she doesn't play ESO as much anymore. But she still plays ESO. Like she likes to do the questing stuff, and she likes to collect. And so getting lore books is something that I've had to do once, but I have lore books in Mage's Guild on like 9 or 10 characters. So that's always nice. But yeah, she likes playing, and yeah, like it's fun. It's fun. It's cool that she allows me to, play video games and talk about video games.
Yeah. So Microsoft, with their purchase, there's hope around the corner. I think everybody kind of feels that. I know I was complaining to Icy a lot. I felt like it was a bad breakup with the game. It's imminent, like performance issues, and I'm just so frustrated with everything. And I actually quit for a while.
Yep.
And but I think it was actually maybe the next day after I quit, and I saw Microsoft had purchased, because I had mentioned to Icy, I said, dude, I do not feel like they're taking the funds that their profit or their funds and reallocating it towards. I don't feel like they're allocating funds towards the game.
Yes.
Properly. And then we find out that since like 2018, they're developing another MMO, and they were just, maybe setting money aside towards that, or, prepping for the Microsoft purchase, and who knows. But I'd been telling this. I feel sorry for Icy because he sits there and has to listen to me complain about not being able to bar swap, and he watches me stream BG, and I die because an ability's not working, and I go back and watch the video, and you can see me hitting it 7 times and it's not working. And
Yep.
It's like, hey, I don't know if streaming's going to be the best idea for you, Grim. So, but how do you feel about Microsoft? Is there hope, you think, or concern? What's your thoughts on Microsoft?
Well, I want to before I say that, I wanted to talk about like, your experience. I actually had a similar experience. I took a break from the game too a little bit ago. I had a thing happen in the family, and the game wasn't working, and I'm like, you know what, I just don't want to deal with this, so I stopped playing for like 2 weeks. And then the double Telvar event happened. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hop in there. Like, this is my favorite event of the year. Like, let's see what happens. And then I didn't lag at all, and I had awesome PvP. Like, I remember the first time I played, I got zerged down for the first 3 hours. Like, I did not win a single fight. I got ran down by 15 plus people every single time. I had a fight where like I had 15 people chasing me, and I run into this room, and there was 2 snipers in the room waiting for me, and I get ganked from the back while I'm running from these other 15 people. I'm like, are you kidding me? And and it was, you know, like, but I enjoyed it. Like, this is the thing. I enjoyed it because the game worked. And that got me back into the game. That got me back into playing more. And yeah, like, there's just fights where, like, you know, I came out with a new build last week, and it's a really fun build. And I'm having a really hard time compiling clips because all the clips don't look very good because everybody's skipping across the map with gap closures and stuff.
Yeah.
I've had I thought about doing an entire video on this, but it wouldn't be fun content. It would essentially be like me bitching for an hour. And I don't think, you know, and I'm like, I had multiple 1v8s where I killed 4 people and then I died. And I'm like, if I'm not dying to 8 people, why am I dying to these 4 people? And it was because, you know, my heals weren't going off. I couldn't CC break. You know, I took some damage. I thought my heal worked, but it didn't. And it's really frustrating, you know, and everybody feels it, you know, whether you're a more experienced player like, you know, we are, or you're a brand new player, like, performance is performance and it needs to be adjusted. And I hit that low spot too with where the game was. It was like, you know, it doesn't, like you said, I wanted to agree with you. Like, it doesn't look like they're investing money into this game. You know, it looks like they're basically just trying to, like, milk it for what it's worth and move on. And, you know, in my head, I'm like, well, do I move on before this? You know, like, I've been on games like this. It's not fun. You know, they don't care. They just want to make money. And, like, why invest in something like this? You know?
Yeah.
And the Microsoft thing is leaving me cautiously optimistic. And the reason that is like, I mean, look at Mixer. And I know it's a bad example, but to bring up Mixer because it doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But like, they bought Mixer and then they immediately invested money to go out and get, like, top tier streamers. They invested a bunch of money and they wanted to make it a thing. You know,
the thing with Ninja.
Yeah.
yes, yep,
Okay.
yep, Ninja and Shroud. You know, so Microsoft bought Mixer and then, like, that's what they did. They got Shroud and they got Ninja and then they stopped. And so people are like, well, what's Microsoft's next move? You know, like, what are they going to do next to compete with Twitch? And it turned out it was nothing. You know, like, they just decided to do nothing else with it, which was too bad. But it leaves me cautiously optimistic because they threw millions of dollars at Mixer to make it a thing. And so it's like, okay, they don't have to throw, you know, 10, 20, 30 million dollars at you know, ESO to make it better. You know, it's costs a fraction of that to upgrade the servers. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that because, you know, they're potentially not looking to sell anymore, you know, because they're going to look like, okay, well, how do we make this a better game? You know, it's an MMO. It has a lot of shelf life. Like the developers have come out and said, you know, we want to get 5 more years. You know, we think we have 5 more years of content with this. It's like, okay, well, you know, if you're no longer selling, does that mean that, you know, the amount of money you're going to invest into the game is going to improve? And we don't know. Like, none of us know, but I'm cautiously optimistic that it could be a thing because I remember I was reading Twitch and I forget who it was. I think it was Gina Bruno. Like, she shared it and she goes, like, she was super excited, you know? And so I can only imagine, like, being a developer and you're trying to make this great game, but your budget just doesn't allow you to do what you want to do, you know? And if they do, you know, upgrade the servers, like, we could see performance improve almost immediately. Which, you know, is why I'm cautiously optimistic, but it also could just not happen. You know, like, they could just be like, you know what, this is making us money. We're going to keep it the way it is, and which would be too bad also, because it is a very promising game. So
I see it. He mentions this a lot, but he's like, you know, we always complain about the performance. We always complain about the, you know, not using abilities and the lag and everything. He goes, but I'll see you tomorrow.
yeah.
You know, like,
Yep.
they got us. So I don't know. So what about you?
Oh, I have one more to add to
Oh,
there.
yeah. What do you got?
So when you were mentioning that, you know, you have these nice clips, but you don't want to include them in your video because you have people jumping around all over the place. Whether, for one example, just being Sorks streaking and rubber banding back in your videos,
Yeah.
and it doesn't look well. Do you actually report back to ZOS or open up the help and customer support and put feedback? And do you actually, like, contribute in some way to maybe help them resolve the situation. This is something I just started doing earlier this week, where whenever I do encounter an issue, I do report it, because again, I know me, Grim, and the rest of our people in our small little group, we see these issues, we talk about them all the time within our group, but it never leaves the group. We don't
Yes.
report back at any point at all to ZOS. And for me, this is something I just started doing this week, where I encounter something. Hey guys, just give me 30 seconds here. Let me just type this up here, send it out, and then we move on, continuing our day. Do you do anything sort of like that, where you're just providing feedback, hopefully with the intention of, I hope they fix this one day? Do you do anything like that?
You know, that's a really good question, and now I feel bad because I don't. No,
Which is totally fine, because I think
No.
by default we all do that.
Yeah,
Right.
no, and you're bringing up a good point, because like if you look at the last few patch notes, ZeniMax has been pretty responsive to changes. Not all changes, not all the changes that we want, but like a lot of things have gotten adjusted that I've been pretty happy about. Like that I feel like they're listening to the community on. Like the adjustments to the major and minor buffs this patch, reducing them is something that quite a few of us have talked about for a while. And now that it's incorporated, it's like, holy crap, this is something that the community's been talking about and they're listening. And if you think they're listening, and I do, you should be providing that feedback. And I don't. And the reason I don't is because like I often play on Xbox, and typing out things with a controller, oh my God, I hate whisper. Like I hate whispering people. I hate messaging people, because I just like, I don't have the keyboard right there, So when I'm on my computer, when I'm on PTS, like sometimes I'll be like, hey, I'm lagging out trying to load into the PTS. But no, I don't normally do that. And now I think I probably will. I think that makes a lot of sense, because if you have everybody in the game like, hey, I'm riding on my mount and I'm running across the top of it, like those little changes, like if they're getting bombarded, with constant like support things, like, hey, here's an issue, here's an issue, here's an issue, I think eventually, like, it's like, okay, well, if we want these messages to stop, we have to fix it, So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I feel bad because I don't know.
Yeah, because I think if in some, like this, either this patch or the next patch, if I saw a line that said, hey, the second zone on EP side in the Imperial Sewers, we fixed an issue where you could not see your party members, I think I might actually go spend an additional $15 to buy crowns. Just
Yeah.
because, oh my
Right.
God, they actually listened to my report that I wrote every
Yeah.
day. Every time we go down there, I write the same thing, copy paste it, and they actually did something. That would
Yep.
I would be ecstatic if that actually happened. Because since I've been playing in the sewers with Grim since December 2019, it's been the same thing every single time we go there. Can never
Yep.
see each other. Yeah. So.
Yep. Yeah, and I've had so I don't know any of the devs or anything like that. So I want to make this clear. Like I don't interact with the devs individually, but I'm friends with a guy that is friends with one of the devs.
I know a guy who knows a guy.
Yeah, like I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'll get to what I'm talking about. But there was a set that I found a few patches ago that was absolutely busted. And I like to, in the entrance of full disclosure, like I like to try and share everything, get it out there. But sometimes some stuff is so broken, you don't want to share it because you don't want to bring that into PvP and deal with it, because it's not fun. It's not fun to deal with stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? Instead of sharing this set, I'm just gonna try and go, back channel and be like, hey, are you friends with this guy? Can you message them and ask them about this set? And he goes, yeah, sure, absolutely. And so I was like, it's just really strong. Like when you consider it's Heartland. Okay, we'll just say what it is. Bastion of the Heartland, like a few patches ago, was like 25% damage mitigation to all AoE stuff. And when you think about how many skills in PvP are AoE, it was like 80% of builds. And like this was when Nightblades weren't as, like, this is when Incap didn't have his knockdown, so Nightblade wasn't as powerful. So the single target builds weren't as powerful. Nightblade wasn't the power, like the strong class that it is right now. So it was like the only single target abilities you're getting hit by are D-swing, and surprise attack, you know, like, but everything else, Dawnbreaker, leap, all this stuff, you're getting 25% damage mitigation. And then you stack it with shuffle and you become a super tank for no reason, you know, like it's just like, holy crap. And I had clips where like I was just like running through people and my health bar wasn't moving, you know. And so I messaged this guy and, you know, he went related to the devs and they're like, yeah, it should be half that number. And they're like, you know, just don't talk about it, don't share it, you know, whatever. And lo and behold, the patch notes come out and it got reduced.
Wow.
And
Nice.
you know, just like what you guys are talking about, like, you know, if you think that they're listening and you think they're going to adjust stuff, you should continue to do it. And I'm not trying to, the reason I'm sharing this story is to like, you know, incentivize people to like, hey, you know, they very well could be listening to, you know, the feedback. And so if you think that it could help, you should do it, you know, because like you said, it only takes a couple minutes to do, you know, and like you said, if you saw it on the patch notes that they adjusted this, you'd be like, holy crap, I'm going to keep doing this. And then in the same way, like when I saw Heartland got adjusted, that's why I post the videos that I post. That's why I post this content. Because like, okay, well, you know, whether or not they're listening to me directly or like I expand it to my audience and then the people in my audience talk about it on the forums and then they're listening to people on the forums, it doesn't matter. A good idea is a good idea, you know? So,
Right.
And I think that's why like people are like, oh, ZeniMax doesn't listen. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, they are, you know, they don't listen to everything. Just because they're listening doesn't mean that they agree with you. You know, maybe they don't agree. Maybe you think like New Moon Acolyte should be 200 weapon damage. Well, it's like, okay, well, they didn't adjust New Moon Acolyte to 200 weapon damage, so they don't care about us. It's like, no, they just don't agree with your point of view, you know? And they don't agree with everything I say. They're not going to agree with everything you guys say, but, you know, that's all you can do is bring forward the best argument you can and, you know, hope things get adjusted in the way that you think is best. So.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of, are you familiar with Unstoppable, the skill part of the heavy armor skill line?
Yeah. Yep.
So I think there's a line on it that says it'll make you immune to knockbacks and disabling effects. And that's exactly what the immovable potion also says. And so my train of thought was, okay, well, if I can pop a immovable potion and res somebody, that makes me immune to bashes, and I can pull the res off in a heated situation, so we can get back, so I can get this guy back in the fight. And I thought, okay, well, I could just sub out the immovable potion with just the unstoppable skill because it should work the same way. Turns out it doesn't. You're not CC immune, and you can be bashed at any point. And my other thought was I can pop the unstoppable, hit meditate, so now I can, you know, gather my resources on between my magicka, stamina, and health while I'm immune because of the unstoppable skill, and I'd be good.
Yep.
Nope, doesn't work.
Yep.
So again, I did submit that ticket once I found this out because it was very disappointing when you expect an ability to work based on what it says in the tooltip, and then it doesn't. So now it kind of kills the type of play style you were hoping to do with your build or whatever. But that was the end of my rant there. You can go ahead.
No. Yeah.
How we doing on time, Icy?
We have about 40, we'll say 35 minutes.
Okay. How are you doing on time? Is there?
I'm doing good.
Good. Can we hear a little bit about how you came into playing this game? Obviously, you play on PC and you play on Xbox, correct?
Yes.
And how you got into content creating, your maturation process with PvP, like a behind the curtains look at you, so people can kind of see your process, where you came from.
Well, so I'm not like an original Elder Scrolls guy. Like I started off with first person shooters, you know, Halo, Call of Duty, Gears of War. You know, I would just rotate between those games. Like every time one came out, I was playing a first person shooter. And my roommate at the time, he had Oblivion in the Xbox. And it was, you know, Oblivion was older at the time. And I saw it a few times. I saw one game of the year and I was like, I don't know anything about this, you know, but I was bored one day, you know, like I was in between classes and I loaded up Oblivion and I didn't get it, you know, like I didn't get it. And I told my buddy, I'm like, how can you play this game? Like all of a sudden I'm in the middle of the world and I don't know what to do. And he goes, oh, you go to the objectives and like it'll tell you, like you can choose a quest and you can, you know, choose where to go, and then that'll give you your direction of where you need to go to. And I was like, oh, like I never played an MMO, you know, so like I didn't know that I had to choose a quest. Like that's how new I was, and that just like hooked me. Like I put hundreds of hours into Oblivion. I did the same thing for Skyrim. Like I loved them both, and I told a lot of friends, I'm like, you know, if they came out with an Elder Scrolls game that had online multiplayer PvP where you could shoot bows, like cast spells and all this other sorts of stuff, I was like, that's all I would ever play. And I stopped playing games, and then they came out with ESO, and I'm like, holy crap, they actually came out with it. I'm going to pick up, like, I bought an Xbox and I bought Elder Scrolls to play. Like I'd stopped playing games because first person shooters weren't fun for me anymore. You know, wow. It just always is, you know, boring. So I got ESO and I was playing it, and I love the challenge, you know, of theory crafting a new build. And like, you know, when we were brand new, like I feel like I'm pretty proficient on most classes now, but at that time I wasn't. You know, I was a new player. I knew one class kind of, and every other class I either didn't have or I sucked at. And it was a fun challenge. Like, okay, I can do this on a Nightblade. Can I do this on a Magicka Dragon Knight? Can I do this on a Stamina Dragon Knight? You know? And, you know, you talk to your guild members and stuff, and people are like, hey, you know, and you talk about stuff, and, you know, you talk about the game, and they're like, you know, Stamina Dragon Knight sucks. I'm not having any fun. I'm not having any fun playing my class. I love the class, but I can't find a build that works for me. And, you know, they're my friends. You know, I want to help them. You know, I want to help them find something that they're going to enjoy. So I'm like, all right, cool. So, you know, I would hop on Stamina Dragon Knight and I would help them try and find something that was fun. You know, that was the most fun thing for me. It's not getting like sexy 1vx clips. It's not, you know, doing whatever I said I've been doing in the last 2 videos that I posted. What's fun for me is, you know, helping people enjoy this game in the same way that I do. And it's a challenge, you know, to come up with this stuff. So it hasn't happened lately because I haven't been playing as much, but I often try to play the weakest classes every single patch, because in my head, I'm like, these people are probably struggling to enjoy this game the most. And so if I can give them a build to where they can feel, you know, more competitive, you know, they're going to enjoy this game more. And hopefully they, you know, they can see and enjoy this game in the same way that I do, you know?
I love that. Yes.
and I know it sounds silly, but like, it was a year ago now, and during Elsewhere, a guy, I still remember it because I posted a Magicka Templar build, and I thought it was a pretty good build, you know? And he goes, hey man, he goes, I just wanted to say thank you because I was finally able to get Emperor on this build. And, you know, it was really great. And I'm sitting there and I'm reading and I'm like, cool, like that awesome. Like somebody was running around as Emperor on a build that I posted, you know, like I helped him have fun in the game, and he made a lot of people unhappy probably, but you know, maybe they should be watching my, no, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just playing, but yeah, like it's that sort of content creation and like coming up with new and unique builds and fun gameplay that really gets me coming back. And it got to a point to where, you know, with my guild members, I would help a couple people, and, you know, people would see my clips and they'd ask, I mean, you guys, I'm sure you guys get the same thing, but they'd be like, all right, well, what's your CP? What traits do you have? You know, what enchants do you have? What's this? What food? You know, they want to know every single thing. What race is your character? They want to copy the exact same thing in the exact same way that you have it, down to the number. And I started to realize, like, you know, instead of having the same conversation 3, 4, 5 times, I could just post a video for them, and they could go back and they could find all the information that they needed in a video. And so it started off as like build videos for my friends, you know, like, hey, here's what I'm running in case you want to see it. And then slowly, like, I had other friends like, hey dude, I didn't know you had a YouTube channel, really good stuff, you know? And it's like, all right, well, we'll just keep doing this then. And so I made builds, and, you know, I posted clips, and, you know, then when I got my PC and I got on the PTS, I got to really do like stuff that I enjoy, which is gear set reviews. And, you know, not everybody enjoys that stuff, but as like a guy that didn't have access to the PTS, it was really nice watching people like Icyfire and other people like hey, this set's actually pretty strong. This is something you might want to have on your radar. And so as a newer player, like I could prepare, like, okay, well, I'm going to have to save up gold, or I'm going to have to get ready to go farm this dungeon. I'm going to have to schedule with friends to go farm, this specific dungeon for this specific gear, because this good player says that this set is good,
Yeah.
And so
I
that's
told
why I started
Icy,
doing it.
actually, you and your gear set reviews single-handedly has allowed me not to have to log into the PTS server. Like you do such a good job spelling out the strengths and weaknesses, and then actually showing where it would be viable. Like you do just a great job showing these different gear sets. But because Icy and I were talking about, what would incentivize people more to go to PTS and test these things out so they don't go live or whatever. And I'm like, well, maybe transmute crystals and things like that. And that's before they were talking about all the additional ways to get transmute crystals. But I was like, I really don't feel the need to go, because is there no one else it's all right there. Every single gear set, and you want to see it function. You want to know how it works. It's right there. You've got that on lockdown.
I appreciate that.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that stuff's fun. The theory crafting is always fun, and like seeing how stuff works, and it's fun to go back and see if you're wrong. That's also fun for me, because I'm not right about every set. I'm not wrong about every set either, but sometimes there's stuff that slips through the cracks. Like, holy crap, like this build is actually good in this way. I didn't see that, and then when you do the next gear set review, you have to kind of keep that in mind. Like
Titanborn, your opinion initially on Titanborn, and then where you're at now, right?
Exactly. Like I was like, Titanborn sucks. And then it took a guy in my Discord, Jinx, he plays on PCNA, and he's like, dude, this is essentially Spriggans at 100% health. And I looked at it and I'm like, he's right. Like this is 1% less damage than Spriggans, and it's way more damage when you're 1vxing. And now Titanborn's one of my favorite sets, and I thought it sucked. And that stuff happens, and nobody has all the answers. Nobody's right 100% of the time, but it's, that's the fun part, is like, hey, like that's where you find like your own build, and you come up with your own unique build or play style or whatever, as you find those little things out that really benefit you.
Yeah. I have a dog barking in the background outside, so don't mind that. So another thing, did you have anything, Icy?
I was gonna ask, when you go into the PTS, do you use ESO Builder, or is the PTS for you your form of ESO Builder?
I use both.
Okay.
So if I'm making a build, I go on the build editor because I want to see the stats. It's for me, it's a lot easier to go through like the build editor than it is to go through all the different boxes on the PTS. But yeah, like what's on paper isn't always how it's going to be applied. And I bring up this example, quite a bit, but when Torque of Tonal Constancy came out and Yondir came out, when it first came out, I posted a build on the build editor, and I had 8,000 weapon damage, and I had 4,000 stamina recovery with tonal constancy procced. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is the best build in the game. Like,
scary.
Like, yeah, like I'm like, I just stumbled across the best build in the game that will be run on everything. That's what was running in my head. I'm like, this is going to be the best build, because Yondir was giving you more damage than Fury. It was a medium armor set. And I'm like, holy crap, like this is awesome. And I was like, you know what? And for me, I don't post a build until I test it. I'm not one of those guys that looks at the build editor and I look at stat sheets and I'm like, because some like I'm trying to say here, stat sheets can lie. And they can be like, they can look pretty, but functionally the build sucks, And so I farmed that gear, I put that build on, and I hated it. It was not good, because how tonal constancy works, like you have to be lower magicka to get the stamina recovery. So in some spots, I was hitting an extra cloak, so that I could get tonal constancy procced. And because I hit an extra cloak, I didn't have it when I needed it. And those little things added up around the edges. And I was like, the stats look nice, but the build doesn't function in the same way, in the way that I thought it would. It's not as powerful. So I ran something with like 6,000 weapon damage, and that was way better, just the build functioned more smoothly, and it was less clunky. And I like, even though the stats weren't as pretty, it was a better build because it functionally, worked a certain way. And there's a lot of set conditions that function that way. And you see stuff on paper and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to destroy everybody. Like, I'm going to destroy everybody. And then you play it and you're like, oh crap, why does this suck? Like, what did I miss?
Yeah, everybody's destroying me with this build instead.
Yeah. I just imploded myself. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When you were coming up, like getting to the point where your skill set and everything and name recognition and stuff, who were the people that played on console that maybe were content creators? Or like for me on PC, it was Lefty Lucy and Del T Gaming and Cypher and King Richard. And like, so I played since beta, but whenever I heard that Fang Rush or these guys were here, like I wanted to go there to hope, get an encounter with them. Like I want to fight them, and who was that for you on console? And do you have a story about any of those interactions?
There were a few people. There was nobody I really like, because I played it as soon as it came out on Xbox, and so we were kind of all in the same boat. Like we were, like nobody was established yet. We're all just trying to figure our own stuff out. People would be like, hey, this streamer like Baker of Cakes used to post YouTube videos, and so Baker of Cakes and I used to play a very similar build, and we dueled a couple times, and it never went anywhere. Like we dueled multiple times, and like we just couldn't kill each other because we were way too, like, we had the same build. We couldn't land anything on each other, and we're like, all right, whatever, we'll just move on. And it was always funny because like he ran a build that everybody hated, because he'd run around with 19,000 health, which was low even at that point in time. And he had like 3,000 or 4,000 stamina recovery, and he just had well fit, and he just dodge rolled. And like, he would sit there and he would pepper you with poison injection from range, and he'd really upset people. Like, he would really piss people off because they're like, look at this guy. Like this guy doesn't want to fight. He just wants to dance around. I'm going to go get him. And I remember I was playing with my buddy, and he's like, I'm going to go get him. Screw this guy. He thinks he's better than me. I'm going to go get him. I'm like, and so he chased off after him, and he was on a Magicka Templar, and he's sprinting after this Stamina Nightblade. I'm like, dude, don't do that. Like, that's what he wants you to do. And literally, like, we're in a group, and I saw his health bar go boop to 0. he didn't talk for a couple minutes. And so I'm sitting there and like, I'm trying not to laugh, but, and I talked to him a little bit later. I'm like, dude, that's his build. Like, he's trying to upset you. He wants you to chase him so that you drain your stamina, so that when he incaps you, you don't have anything to break and you die. So everything that he's doing, he just succeeded in getting you to do it. And he's like, oh, you're right. And after that, like, he had a lot more success against him. He's like, I'm not going to chase him. He's going to have to come fight me on my terms. And like, he ended up, winning more fights than later on down the line. But I can't tell you how many times I'd be playing with my friends. They'd be like, oh, Baker of Cakes, let's go get him. And they chase after him. And all of a sudden you see the health bar, boop. And you're like, well, that's what happens, dude. Like you gotta watch your stuff. It's by design, he's not just doing it to run away and be scared. So
yeah. Have you noticed a difference between the way people build or play console versus PC?
Yeah. And that's probably the biggest difference. I wouldn't say that there's a huge difference in overall skill. Like, the good players are good regardless of whatever platform you're on, but how people build in the metas that you're in, I think are super unique. Like, if you, in my Discord, PCEU, from what I've been told, is just like a high health, everybody's running procs like crazy fast. Like, that's what that meta is. And Xbox NA, everybody's just a tank. Like everybody that runs in a large group, they don't build for damage, they build for survival, and they knock down doors. And their goal is to survive long enough to flip the keep, and then, overwhelm you with numbers. Killing people is secondary to survival for AP gains. And then you hop on PCNA, and there's a lot more organized 10 and 12 man groups. I'm not saying like some of them are a lot better than others, but they're all trying to function the same way. You see people proxying up, you see spin to wins, you see some bombard builds. Like everybody has a unique role for their group, and they try to fulfill it. And there's a lot more of those on PC NA than Xbox NA. And I thought that was interesting. I thought that was super interesting because, you know, in some ways, PC NA, it's sometimes easier to get 1vx's because not everybody's a tank. You know, like, so if you run across those ball groups and they don't function well, you can wipe their whole group because they actually have damage dealers in their group. And because they're built to deal damage, you can deal damage to them, you know? And I'm fighting these groups and I'm like, holy crap, like I can actually kill people here. If I go to Xbox, everybody's got like 50k health, and the minute somebody dies, they're all like standing on top of their body trying to revive, you know? And I have to, my entire fight is me bashing people from reviving, you know? And I think that's the cool part is, you know, seeing what each different platform has, I guess.
Yeah. Do you got anything else, Icy?
It was to the previous comment right before this one where you were saying how your buddies like to run off and chase and then they'll get dropped. And
Yeah.
it kind of reminded me of a video I think you did maybe a month ago or so, and you were talking about how when you see people put down static ground static ground abilities like liquid lightning or wall of blockade of elements, anything like that, you know, okay, the easy way to counter that is just to walk away and fight them not in that area, right?
Yes.
And we ran into a spot yesterday. I was with two of my other buddies, and we were trying to farm some world bosses in the districts, and there was this Stamsork that was just giving us the runaround, and we were just trying to go through the door, but he wouldn't let us go. So then we would chase him for a little bit, and we had already killed him once already, and so he came back again because he wanted his 6k Telvar back that he graciously gave to us. So the second time around, we're trying to go through the door. He stops us, so we chase him, and now he's just constantly going in and out of the little cages that are there. And I'm like, hold on a second. I just saw your video, and I'm like, you know, he's fighting us on his terms, and we can't kill him because he keeps going in these little crevices. I'm like, hold on, let's head back to the door. Okay, so the three of us, we go back to the door, and guess what? The dude follows us. As soon as he turns the corner, boom, he's dead in 3 seconds. And I'm like, well, that was easy. As soon as we pulled him away from where he wanted to fight, it was over. He had no response. So, yeah, no,
exactly.
It was just an interesting moment when, I guess for me, when you hear people talk about these things and like the knowledge it brings, and then you actually apply that, and it's true. You just try to fight the enemy in your terms, and you'll win. But I'd say a handful of times.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh man, I just lost my train of thought. Crap. It's funny because like when you fight people in those instances, like those little changes really, really add up. And like kind of going off what you're talking about, Thews of the Harbinger. I don't know how many times I've heard people complain about Harbinger builds and how our Harbinger builds are overpowered and all these other sorts of things. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, guys, like you have to look at the set and how it functions. You know, it functions off of you doing damage while they're blocking. You know, so if all of a sudden you see him holding block for a long time, you don't fight him. You know, you just stand there and you wait. And I had a 1v2, like this one dude was trying to duel me, and I'm on my Stam DK, and I'm dueling him, and this Harbinger tank shows up, and like he's trying to he's hitting me with the fear totem and stuff, and they're both fighting me now, so it's a 1v2, and I killed the mag DK, and I'm like, I'm gonna kill this Harbinger tank by myself, you know, like screw this guy. Like that's what went into my head. And you know, every time he'd block and like my light attack or my D swing, like I'd lose a little bit of damage, but I'd stand back, I'd wait for his block to go down. But with those builds, you wait for, you know, them to come out of their ultimate form, you know, because it's a transformation. So when they transform out, there's that 2-second window where they can't do anything because they're powering down, you know, they're going back into human form. They can't block, they can't cast heals, they can't do anything. And he goes into his build and he's holding block at me, and I'm like, okay, dude. So I just stand there, you know, pop vigor and rally. I'm just waiting, and he transforms down, and I go into corrosive, and and then I delete his health bar, and like when I see people talking about, and it's not just that, I do think Thews does need to be adjusted, but there's a very simple fix around Thews builds. Like you see somebody holding block, don't attack them. Wait till his block goes down. They're stacking into health for a reason. They don't have a ton of stamina, like wait till they're out of their Goliath form. They're not going to do as much damage at that point, and then catch them in that window. If you do a bunch of damage in that window, they're going to have a hard time recovering because they don't have a build to where they can really heal and survive. And that sort of thing applies to, like, that's just one build, but you can apply that to all builds. Like every build has weaknesses in different things, like the Stam Sork you're talking about. He's trying to fight you. He's trying to narrow down the numbers. Don't allow him to do that. Like catch him, like the minute he comes after you, turn around, ulti dump him. There's 3 of you. You got 3 ultimates. Like you said, he died in 2 seconds once you caught him, on your battlefield. And yeah, like that's another fun part of the game. Is just picking up those little nuanced things and applying them.
So follow up on that. When do you think it's appropriate do you think it's an appropriate solution to nerf harbingers because of the way it works, or is it just a set where if you're smart and you have the knowledge, you know how to counter it and it's not an issue? Where do you draw the line on that? So is the set overpowered, or you just don't know what you're doing, how to counter it, so it's not really an issue?
I think it's both. I haven't really thought about, how I feel about that build and play style.
Or just the concept in general. Yeah.
So I will say this. I'm not a fan of the tank meta. I'm not a fan of like the super tanky drag it out fights. I don't think they're fun. I think higher damage metas are more fun. Just like being able to act and react more quickly is a more engaging game, And so when everybody's super tanky, it's not fun. I think Thews builds kind of bring you back to the tanky meta. And I think things like werewolves, like how werewolves are currently constructed, also bring you back to the tanky meta. And that was part of the reason, like, I didn't want to share the werewolf build, is because I didn't want to go back to something to like I didn't want to incorporate a build into PvP that, is a type of play style that's just not very fun to deal with. It's not fun to encounter. And I do think Thews has a place. I think it's a cool proc conditional set. I think people that are dying to it more often than not are inexperienced players that don't know how the set functions. They're like, I'm beating up on this guy that has 80k health and he's deleting my health bar. And it's like, well, yeah, because you're damaging him. If you weren't damaging him, he literally could do nothing. I had 2 Thews builds and a healer show up to my resource a couple days ago, and they run up on me. I'm like, oh my god! Like I saw what it was right away. They're like 2 guys are hitting the scythe, and the guy was the other guy had the pocket healer. I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to kill this group. Like you can't kill like a very sturdy healer 1v1 by itself if they know what they're doing, and this guy does. And I'm like, you stack 2 Thews builds on top of that, like I can't do anything. And so I stood there.
We're not trying to fight that.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't kill them, but they can't kill me either if I don't attack them. And so they were hitting me with resto staffs. They're trying to block at me, and I'm not doing anything. So they had to move on. They went on to the next person or the next group of people. They were built to take out Zergs. That's what they were trying to do. They weren't trying to 3v1 me, because that's not what their build is for. So I don't know. I do think Thews is a lot of noise, because it's just people not knowing how the set functions. Like if they knew how the set functioned and how to counteract it, it wouldn't be as problematic as it is. But I do think you can make an argument that it's, it's not exactly enjoyable to deal with, it's, I don't know, like I have a hard time explaining what I'm trying to say here, because I haven't really thought about it a whole lot. But it's not a fun build to fight. There's builds that aren't a problem. There's builds that just are very problematic. And I can see where that one's kind of teetering on that line there of like, okay, well, if a lot of people were running something like this, the game would be just annoying. It's super annoying to play, but yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think, I guess? I don't know. I can be twisted.
Yeah. I know when I typically always run support builds, so that's everything I'm geared against. Because if Grim or Papa they're running their normal DPS stuff, I just try to fill in the gaps with either CC or heals or debuffs, buffs, and that sort of thing. So for me, I can never say that I have an issue fighting something because I'm kind of playing my own type of game where I'm just trying to help these guys go from great to amazing or
Yeah.
something like that. That's my mentality around those types of things. But I know with running with Papa the last couple weeks, what if we did encounter a tank? He normally runs the Berserker ultimate, the two-handle, and then corrosive armor on the back bar, and he'll usually just use the two-hand ultimate. But if it's a tank, then we're just going to wait another 20, 30 seconds for him to get corrosive, and then the guy's deleted right after that.
Yes.
And that's our form of counterplay when we do come across these tanks. And it happened right. So before he had corrosive on the board, we ran into a werewolf that we just couldn't kill, and it was a 1v. It was a 2v3. We killed his buddy werewolf, and then that werewolf killed one of our buddies who was on his low B, and then now it was just a 1v2, but we couldn't kill the guy. And Papa didn't have corrosive on, but if he did, the werewolf would have been deleted 10 times out of 10, no problem. And so when I see moments like that, it's our werewolves overpowered. I mean, if we got corrosive on the team, then we're fine. It's werewolves aren't an issue, in my opinion. But it's a case by case basis. And when we're down in the sewers, for one example, whenever we encounter a Nightblade, I always have Mage Light on my bar, no matter what. So when we do find one, we can always catch this guy every single time.
Yep.
So that's just me coming from a support side and how I try to fill in the gaps with the team and the BS that we encounter down there.
Yeah.
I have a funny Harbinger story, and I know we'll have to wrap this up. We probably have 7 minutes left of recording time, but for me, when I'm testing builds down in the sewers, I was on my Thanos build, and I just kind of in zone chat, hey, anybody out tonight, anybody running? And I always like to meet new people. And this group of 3 or 4 picked me up, and nobody knew who I was. I didn't expect them to know who I was. Some people do, but so we're running and we're going to the districts, and there's one single AD necromancer capturing the districts by himself, nobody else. And these guys all jump on him. I jump on him immediately too, just to get him off the board. And we realize, I see him holding block, and he's just holding block, and I'm taking damage. Tells me right there he's running Harbingers. And so I literally stop attacking him, and they're putting a pressure into him. They do push him off the flag, but one by one, they all start killing themselves and die, and then they respawn and run right back in, to fight the guy. And after probably 2 to 3 deaths from each person in this group, except for me, because I just stopped attacking the guy altogether, I literally sheath my weapon and I go over and I just stand next to the guy and I'm like, guys, this is how you fight that dude. You don't. You just don't. If he wants to take the district, we can push him off the flag. That's fine. We can push him around and make him feel pressure, but just realize you're hurting yourself, and if you need to recover, then just stop doing damage and focus on recovering, and then put pressure into them. And there's a way to handle Harbingers. But it's kind of this eye-opening moment for everybody, I think, in the group. Oh, that's how you deal with Harbingers. You do it at your own pace, and it's just a different animal. And I think as more people, corrosive armor would hurt it, but because it's a tank. But that's how you deal with those guys. And sometimes that's just not the right fight for you. Just find someone else.
Yeah, I had so during the double tail bar event, I was streaming one night, and I can't tell you how many of those builds I ran across. Everybody's down there. They had Telvar, they had Harbinger, and we're fighting these groups, and they're sitting there holding block, and I'm on stream, and people are like, "Oh, it's a Harbinger tank. It's a Harbinger tank. Watch out!" And the typical stuff. And I'm like, guys, like, there's an easy way to do this because if you've played Werewolf, if you've played Vampire or anything, where you transform, that there's that window to where you can get absolutely destroyed when you have to transform back. And so I'm with my buddy. It's just me and him. I'm like, dude, watch this. I was like, I'll tell you when to ulti dump, but just wait for it. And it's like a 20-second ultimate. I'm like, all right, he's gonna come out of this now. And so we're standing there, not doing anything, not really attacking him, and he's holding block, like, fight me. And then he comes out of his form, and we ulti dump him. So I hit my Dawnbreaker, he hit his Meteor. He can't block it because he's coming out of that transformation, right? And so at this point, he's taken 20k plus damage. And then I CC'd him because he hadn't gotten CC'd yet. And then we just killed him. And so he went from 50k health or whatever he had to 0 in a matter of like 2 or 3 seconds because of that window. And I think once people pick up on that, and maybe I'll do a video on that and kind of show it, because we did it quite a bit, quite a few times. It's like, yeah, like, you just have to know what Harbinger is, and people are so used to going forward, like fight, and that build is countered to stop that. Like, you have to choose your window, and it's annoying. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it's overpowered. I haven't really thought about it because I haven't played it. But it's tough to deal with. It's annoying if you don't know what it is, and then you die, and then you're mad because you don't know how you died. And I think that's where a lot of the noise for it's coming. Is 80k plus tanks are killing lots of people, and it's like, well, that's because lots of people are attacking them and they're not healing themselves. Like I don't die to it. Like, why are they dying to it? So
Yeah, it's like the set was made to punish the ignorant.
Exactly.
So how can people get a hold of you? I know you got a Discord. Do you have a tip jar? Do you have merchandise? How can people help you out and make this whole process for you easier and you can keep creating content and helping?
So I do have a Patreon. It's in the description for all my videos. I don't really know the best way to go about, advertising that, because it's like, if you want to give me money to help me improve my channel, cool. I'm not streaming currently because performance just isn't allowing for a fun stream, but I do have a Twitch channel, and if performance does improve, I'll go back to streaming that. I have a Discord, so if you guys liked this conversation, you listeners, or just you guys in general, it's a theory crafting Discord. So you just hop in. Like, I have different channels for different classes. You go there and ask your question, and I have over 1,000 people in there, and a lot of really good players, YouTubers that you might know, Twitch streamers, or just good players on different platforms. There's people that, do open world ball groups, they do battlegrounds only. They're like you guys, duelists, whatever. People are there to help and get help. And the only stipulation that I have there is, just don't be an asshole. I know we're trying not to swear, but just don't be that guy. Don't be that guy that comes in there and is talking about your stuff, because that's the only way you can get kicked from there. Is be cool, ask questions. Doesn't matter what you're running, doesn't matter what other people are running, but don't be toxic. Save that for whispers and in game and all that other fun stuff. So yeah, but yeah, I guess that's it. I can send you guys the links if you want, and go from there.
Yeah, definitely. Everything, links to your Discord, links to your Patreon, anything that you have that you want, literally just send it to me and I will copy and paste it, put it right in the video description so everybody knows how to get a hold of you.
All right, sounds good.
Did you have anything else, Icy?
Nope. Do you? Otherwise, I'll do a hard out.
Oh, I think we're good. Did you have any questions for us, or are you good?
I think I'm good for now. For now.
That's it, Icy. Do your thing.
Alrighty. Well, on that, we will see you guys on the next one. See ya.
See ya. You're going to say bye-bye, Argonians.
Bye bye, Rogonian.